Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. So glad you're with us. Welcome from wherever you are all around the world. Many of you are joining us at goodlifetelevision.org. Some of you right here in Santa Barbara on TV Santa Barbara. And then you can find us on all the social media platforms. And we're so glad you are. Good Life is about the good stuff. And that doesn't always mean the easy stuff, by the way. As our story today, we'll talk about. My guest is Victoria Strong. Victoria is a disability advocate, a writer, a speaker, and the executive director of the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation, and the proud mother of three. After her 6-month-old daughter Gwendolyn was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy, type 1, Victoria and her husband Bill created the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation, which we're going to hear all about, to do something. And so welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I love the Never Give Up shirt.
Thank you. Yes, that's our mantra.
That's so good. That's so good. Well, first, before we get to Gwendolyn and the foundation, tell us a little bit about your background. Did you grow up in Santa Barbara, or where are you from?
No, I was actually born in Texas.
Oh, really?
In Dallas. And my dad's from London. My mom is from Texas/Mississippi.
Okay.
And then we moved to California when I was 6. And then I moved all around California. And when my husband and I met, in LA, we just really wanted to live in a smaller community, family-oriented, and took the leap and moved here without jobs, and then kind of made our path and had Gwendolyn within the next year. So
wow.
We felt like we really found our home here.
And so Gwendolyn, 2007, Gwendolyn was born. Was she the first?
She was our first,
okay.
Yes.
So walk us through kind of what happened. So from birth to kind of the story
Okay.
of that early on.
Yes, so I had a typical pregnancy, and Gwendolyn was born seemingly healthy. At around 3 months old, I noticed she wasn't reaching out for toys, and she was fussing through nursing. So we went to our pediatrician thinking she was caught a cold or something along those lines. Thankfully, our pediatrician really took it seriously and had us admitted to the hospital, because by that night she was completely paralyzed. And at the time, they didn't know what it was, because she had seemed so healthy and she was chunky, and so they just didn't know, and they thought it was potentially infant botulism. And so we were in the hospital for a month searching for a diagnosis and monitoring her progress, and then sent home with really not a lot of answers. And eventually a simple blood test was ordered for a rare disease called spinal muscular atrophy that is much like ALS, but in babies. So at 6 months old, she was diagnosed with SMA. And we received a phone call that literally said, there's nothing you can do, there's no treatment, just love her for what time you have left. We were given maybe a year at the most. Fortunately, we actually called every SMA expert, and we were obviously devastated, but we just were hopeful there were maybe other answers. Yeah. And while we didn't find that, we did find some specialists at Stanford. So within 2 weeks, we were up at Stanford and at least getting her some medical interventions. And that led to a breathing tube, a feeding tube, a lot of respiratory help. And that gave us time. But even they were still not sure how, what the prognosis was. At the time, most children born with SMA didn't see their second birthday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it was dire. But also, while we were in the hospital, we were scouring the internet, as you do, and learning all about Gwendolyn's care. And while she was sleeping, though, we would talk to every doctor who would talk to us, every researcher, just searching for answers. And what we found is SMA, though rare, we were very lucky. There were actually quite a lot of researchers studying it, and they actually knew exactly what caused it. And that was, that's far above so many other diseases. And so even in the bleakness of where we were, we did feel fortunate. And so that kind of gave us a path there was legislation going through Congress to help increase research funding. So we poured our energy into that immediately, literally from the hospital. And then following that success, we started the foundation and started raising funding because, you know, it felt, I'm not a researcher, I can't cure the disease, but I could at least help the amazing scientists who were working so hard at it, and they needed funding. And so that, it's really was that simple.
Wow.
And, you know, Gwendolyn's care was 24/7, round the clock. But the thing that, for her life never really changed. Obviously, for us, it was a massive diagnosis. But she still thought we were her awesome, silly parents. And, you know, she was such a social butterfly. And from the hospital room, every doctor who came over, she made sure that they noticed her as Gwendolyn and not a patient. And she'd work so hard to wiggle her little fingers over to tap them on their hand and get their attention. And so, you know, we took cues from her. And we just made a decision really early on to let her guide us and to live as well as we could. And it turned out Gwendolyn liked to live big.
Really?
Yes. She constantly challenged us. You know, we were told she would be in the hospital with respiratory illness her whole entire life. And she actually wasn't. She was medically fragile, but she loved other children. And so while we were nervous because of colds, she just thrived with other children. So she went to school full time. She was in a full inclusion program in the classroom. I went with her to help make that happen. She also had a nurse to help make that happen. But the kids just absolutely adored her. And actually that's kind of where, well, our first focus was on research. Once we accomplished our goals with that, that's actually where the essence of our new project is because of seeing the impact Gwendolyn had on children, typical children, and how their lives flourished just as much as hers did.
Wow. She lived 7 years.
Yes, 7 years and 9 months. She was headed into the 3rd grade. It was the summer before 3rd grade that we lost her.
So what did you learn from Gwendolyn?
Oh, what didn't I?
We need another T-shirt, Live Big. I like that.
I know, yeah.
Never give up, live big.
Yeah.
But how would you characterize what changed in you?
I mean, I think, well, firstly is a radical acceptance. As to me, is brutal. It, you know, while it takes and takes and takes, so we could never actually get a sense of a new normal. Our new normal was constantly changing. It was degenerative. So, you know, she could smile and babble in the early years, but all of that was taken out, every movement. So by the time she was 7, the only thing she could move was one finger. But previously she had been able to move so much more. So that's what I mean by just everything was we were constantly readjusting our expectations and our new normal. And I think the only way to kind of survive that is just full radical acceptance and continually learning to accept. It doesn't mean you have to like it.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to be happy about it, but I think accepting things allowed us to live, because I think if we were so hung up on not accepting what the situation was, then I think we would have been paralyzed ourselves in being able to allow her to live in the way that she wanted to live. Yeah. We were petrified all the time. We saved her life almost every single day, and that became our new normal. But literally, for Gwendolyn, you know, she could choke on her own saliva, for example. So we would have an incident where she would be perfectly fine and then would turn blue and would be going unconscious, and we would save her life and bring her back, and then she would look at us and say, "Okay, so are we going to the park?" Like, I thought that was what our plan was. Let's go. I mean, she was nonverbal, but she said it through her eyes. She used her eyes to communicate, and sounds, and we used a lot of intuition. But so she had so much acceptance of what her life was that we had to follow her lead.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to perspective. We're going to follow her lead. We're going to let her guide.
Yeah.
Which is that's a powerful thought. So you started the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation primarily for research,
Yes.
but I know you also have helped families getting the diagnosis. Is that right?
Yes. I mean, I think as a rare disease, other families often had the answers for even the most minute things. Like our doctor, our specialist, our SMA specialist who saw thousands of children couldn't tell me how to bathe my child because she couldn't sit up in a baby bath chair or she would choke. So she had to be flat, but then she would drown. So it was those little life things.
Yeah.
From day one, we learned to connect with other families. And so we in turn did that as we learned things. We started sharing on our blog, just tips and tricks. And then that soon became, really realizing the financial areas that there are just voids. In order to get out in the world, you need an accessible van.
Right.
Those can cost $50,000 that most people with tons of insurance bills, they just don't have.
Right.
But in order to live, you have to be able to get out. So it's just, so those were the types of things where we try to fund necessities so that children could live the life they want.
Yeah.
And so we've helped over 600 families around the world.
Really?
With a variety of kind of must-haves.
Wow. And you guys have raised like $4 million, or?
Yes, yeah.
That's amazing. Somebody, kind of a mentor person for me one time said, if I could give you a gift, I'd give you the gift of perspective. And I've always thought about that. Like, and I think we've been through something not anywhere near the severity and difficulty that you've been through, but we've been through something. And our perspective has changed.
Absolutely.
Have you found that?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, and perspective is everything. I mean, I think...
Yeah.
And that comes with the acceptance. I think, on Gwendolyn's great days, my perspective would blossom, and on her hard days, I was grateful, to be able to show her the fresh air outside.
Right.
To live in Santa Barbara where we could go out on a walk almost year-round. Those small little things, really, all children try and teach us.
Right.
They are mesmerized by life. And we often are too busy to notice their wonder. And Gwendolyn, because our life slowed down so much, allowed me to really gain that new perspective. And I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, that's such a gift. Let's talk about the playground.
Yes.
We're sitting in Santa Barbara, California, and there is a project that Victoria and others are working on called Gwendolyn's Playground. Which is in process. But tell us, this is an inclusive, a new kind of playground where everyone belongs. You have a site picked out here in Santa Barbara, but talk about the vision for this playground.
So this really has been very organic. With Gwendolyn, we live just up the road from Kids World, which is a wonderful local playground. And we quickly learned in taking her and trying to push her wheelchair through the bark just how challenging access is. I just didn't know. And I think that that's true of most of us. Most of us just don't realize how inaccessible the simple playground is. And Gwendolyn was all joy and wanted to be amongst her peers, and wasn't really able to without a lot of effort. And, I mentioned her experience with her peers at school, and what I actually had a wonderful experience with at a play date in kindergarten, and we went to the park, and the little girl grabbed Gwendolyn's hand and wanted to go up on the play structure with her, but there were stairs, so that's impossible. And here, this little 5-year-old put it so innocently and perfectly. I don't understand. You have a ramp that comes out of your van to let Gwendolyn go in. Why can't we have a ramp up to the playground so I can go play with my friend?
Yeah.
And it was that simple, or it really is that simple. Yes, we should have that.
Yeah.
And so that became, just kind of something in our heart that we knew needed to exist in Santa Barbara. Gwendolyn's life was really inclusive here, and people believe in inclusion here and in acceptance of all. And so I think it's been an element that we didn't know was missing. And so when Gwendolyn died, it was also at the same time that the FDA approval for research that we funded was making its way through its final phase. And that research has become a remarkable treatment if given at birth. Some even call it a potential cure. Children given that within weeks of birth are walking, talking, no breathing assistance, completely typical lives. And so when we realized we had accomplished our goal of changing the disease, and coinciding with losing Gwendolyn and obviously wanting to carry on her legacy of just being such a light and to others, we immediately said, okay, we're going to build this playground. It took me about a year to know of grieving, to know I was going to, to be able to have the courage to be able to tackle this. I knew it would be a long process and cost a lot of money. And so we're 5 years in now. And the amazing thing is the response to this playground has just been incredible from day one. I was concerned I would have to fight for it, and that's why I kind of took that space. I wasn't ready to have to fight another battle. And instead it's been the opposite from the various committee groups and people who have to approve things. We've had unanimous support from the beginning. The community has gotten so behind it, schools. It's just lovely to have everyone believe in the way that I do, that every child deserves to play. And I think, honestly, you cannot get more basic than that. I mean, play is childhood. And so if our goals are big. We knew we didn't want to just address accessibility. We wanted to think about our many friends with sensory processing disorders and autism, and adults with disabilities who often don't have a lot of spaces to go to. We wanted to think about elderly. We looked at so many models, and in the European model, there's so much multi-generational play. And play is good for all of us. It's good for all of our mental health. It can even ward off dementia. So I need to get out there.
I do too.
So that's what we're creating, is really a destination playground that Santa Barbara can really be proud of. And will be a highlight of our city.
That's fantastic. And so people can give to this. There's naming opportunities. There's, and do they go to nevergiveup.org?
Yep, nevergiveup.org. We have about a year left to raise $4.5 million. But we know we can do it. This project is just, it's just joy and goodness. And I think we all need that, maybe more now than ever.
Right. I was reading, you said something interesting in here. Grief and resilience live together. Talk about resilience a little bit, because I mean, you've been through a lot, and a lot of people are going through a lot right now. But what have you learned about, just that, grief and resilience living together?
That's really where our Never Give Up mantra comes from, is, every roadblock it's just that first initial effort to stand back up. You don't have to go and run the race immediately, but you have to stand back up and take that first little step. And I feel we lived that, but we weren't the only ones. We saw it in countless others. And what was really interesting is so many people reached out to us with very different challenges, totally different. And they were finding courage in Gwendolyn's journey, and her resilience inspired them to never give up. And so really, that's, I think, the grief, accepting that grief is a normal part of life, and knowing that it's courageous to carry it. And that doesn't mean that you stop, that you keep going while you carry it. Right. And I think, that's where our Never Give Up shirts, we really, they're a gift for others, so that they can, on those tough days when we were going in for a hospital, we would put our armor on, and it would just be that reminder that we can keep going.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you said, believing everyone can make a difference, we soon launched into advocacy and a dedication to create change, turning our devastating pain into purpose. That process of pain becoming purpose, or your whatever, there's kind of cheesy cliches about, your tests can become your testimony, or whatever, however you want to describe it, but that kind of beauty from ashes experience which is what you've lived. I feel like that's such a wonderful message for people. We all suffer.
Yes.
These bodies kind of suck, if you really think about it. I mean, we're going downhill,
From the moment we're born.
Right, from the moment we're born, it's pretty much downhill. So thinking about the suffering that everybody experiences in their physical body in some way or the other, or a loss, or but having the ability to be resilient, and to see beyond, maybe this hurts really bad right now, but maybe there's something that this is going to become. Pain into purpose. Isn't that to me, that's a message that needs to, the drum we need to beat.
Yes.
Because people are hurting.
Yeah. I do think, for me at the very early stages, it was hard to find purpose immediately. But I will say, in doing something, we were told there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
And so, just in sending those emails to legislators to help support, research legislation, funding research, we started, our something was started small, and then that something became bigger and bigger. And what it did is it was empowering. So instead of feeling 100% the victim in life, we were taking our time with Gwendolyn and making the most of it. We were empowering ourselves to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And, then the great thing, it felt good. It felt really good to be proactive instead of having all of this happen to us. Those subtle little shifts, by taking action when by all senses there's no action to really take,
right.
But finding that something, it changes perspective. It changes everything. And soon it became bigger and bigger and bigger. We started doing things we never dreamt of. And, it all starts with just kind of that first step.
Something.
Yes.
What do I do? Something. Something.
And I think that's where, so many of us, we think of the huge thing.
Right.
And we're just too grief-stricken to reach for that.
Right.
And it's not realistic. You don't go from babyhood to, right, leaping over something. We all have long phases, and I think that's it's okay to start small. That's where we should start.
Yeah.
And see how it makes us feel, and then you grow from that. And now where I am, it is very different. Losing Gwendolyn gutted me. I had experienced grief and lived with grief for her whole life from the diagnosis, but her death rocked me to my core. But the difference was I then knew what it felt like to be empowered, and I knew immediately I would continue on in her mission in life,
Yeah.
and that would help me navigate her loss.
Yeah. And Gwendolyn's life is having a ripple impact,
Yes.
and will for maybe a long, long time.
And now I really can say I look at any for all of us, it's an opportunity to learn more about ourselves. Our struggles are an opportunity to learn more about ourselves, and also use our stories to help change the next person behind us.
Right.
And so I think with every little thing, we should always be turning back and lifting the next person
Yeah,
up.
that's good. Dude, was it scary to have number 2 and 3?
Yeah, very scary. It took us a long time. We
us
didn't
too.
welcome our second child until Gwendolyn was 6. And I'm so glad we took that jump, because that was honestly probably the highlight of my life, was that year, getting to see Eleonora born and getting to see Gwendolyn be a big sister.
Yeah.
She was so proud and so nervous. She wanted to do such a good job. And it was just
so
something,
great.
I think, we thought we would never see that. And so, when the things you think you've lost happen, it feels, the whole year felt like a miracle.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
What a family. It's great to meet you.
It's great to meet you.
I will be rooting for you and supporting on this. The Playground Project, again, it's nevergiveup.org is the website. You can find out all about it. This is a great idea. So that I can't wait to see that built.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, so thanks for all you've done and the research stuff and
Thank
everything.
you.
Thank you for what you've done. It's great to meet you.
Great to meet you too.
We'll see you next time.